Do you want to become an expert in a specific field? The person who organisations and governments contact when they need advice or assistance? If so, as you probably know, a PhD or Masters by Research is the degree you need to achieve this goal. This free online course offers you an opportunity to start this degree before you enrol or commit. After you complete this course, you will have forged progress on your research even before you enrol at a university. But why should you begin your research before enrolling at a university? Well, first, the finest universities and the finest supervisors are more likely to accept your application. Your course is more likely to be fulfilling. Second, you'll not be as stressed during the course. You'll be able to fulfill all of your deadlines. So how many hours do you need to devote to this course? Well, some students can complete this course within a day or so. Other students like to advance further and may devote several days or even weeks to this course. The time you dedicate to this course is up to you. First, determine whether you're eligible to enrol in a PhD or Masters by Research. To enrol in a PhD at an Australian university, your qualifications need to be equivalent or better than an Honours 2A. To enrol in a Masters by Research at an Australian university, your qualifications need to be equivalent or better than an Honours 2B. But whether your qualifications reach this standard can be hard to estimate. So to help you decide whether your qualifications are equivalent to an Honours 1, 2A or 2B, click here to read some helpful guidelines. If eligible to enrol, you should attempt to begin a research proposal. The problem, however, is that nobody quite knows how to develop a research project. They usually just read lots of articles, speak to lots of people, and then hope that some topic will evolve magically. But often, this approach is ineffective. After reading lots of articles, you might feel even more confused and uncertain than before. Instead, click here to read some helpful guidelines. These guidelines specify a series of specific exercises or activities you should perhaps complete to develop a creative but inspiring research project. For example, the guidelines suggest you can list one or more problems in your life, community, or society that you might like to solve, and then convert these problems to a series of keywords, and search these keywords in Google Scholar, Science Daily, or other popular websites to find and read relevant articles. And then attempt to extend or blend your 2 to 4 favourite articles as creatively as possible, even if these possibilities are not plausible. And then skim some books on this topic as relevant and rapidly as possible, an exercise that improves your mood and creativity. And then modify your ideas to help you pursue one or more of your future aspirations. Now, you don't need to complete all the exercises or activities these guidelines suggest. Even if you complete only half or so of these exercises or activities, your research proposal is more likely to be thoughtful, original, and significant. But even after completing these exercises or activities, your draft research proposal is likely to be slightly flawed. Now, to prevent these flaws, you might need to develop your capacity to unearth the subtle but vital limitations of studies and arguments, sometimes called critical thinking. To enhance this capacity, click here to read some helpful guidelines. These guidelines include a series of questions and examples that are designed to enhance your critical thinking. For instance, after completing these guidelines, you'll learn that to deceive readers, writers often pretend that all alternatives can be divided into 2 categories. For example, the statement, "Most people in Australia do not attend religious services and thus tend to be atheist," sneakily but incorrectly implies that people either attend church or are atheists. But some people belong to neither category. You'll also learn how writers often pretend they have explained some phenomenon. For instance, the statement, "An object that is less dense than water will float because these objects don't sink," seems like an explanation, but is actually uninformative. But even if you address all these flaws, universities might still dismiss your research proposal. To prevent this problem, you need to be aware of 8 common mistakes that students commit. For example, students tend to overestimate the amount of work they can achieve in a specific time, called the planning fallacy. And students often dismiss theories or topics that initially seem too hard to understand. To learn more about these common errors, please watch this video. If your research proposal is flawed, your application to enrol will be rejected. But paradoxically, if your research proposal is too compelling, universities might become suspicious. They might assume the research has been conducted before. So to dampen these suspicions, you need to review the literature convincingly. If at all possible, you can begin or even complete a systematic literature review. Now, systematic literature review is more comprehensive, methodical, and respected approach than a traditional literature review. Consequently, if you conduct, or at least begin, a systematic literature review, universities are more likely to perceive your proposal as credible, and your proposal is more likely to be original, and you might even be able to publish the review in the future. To learn how to conduct a systematic review, you should read or at least skim this set of guidelines. But when universities evaluate applicants, especially applicants from other nations, they prioritise 2 skills. First, they want to know the applicants understand research methods. Therefore, you need to justify the research methods that you propose. For example, if conducting qualitative research on speech, text and words, you need to decide which theoretical perspective and methodologies you'd like to apply. So click here to read some helpful guidelines to guide this decision. If conducting quantitative research using numbers, you might need to decide which techniques you'd utilise to analyse the data. So click here to read some helpful guidelines to guide this decision. Now, the second skill that universities prioritise is writing. Interestingly, many students cannot write precisely, concisely, engagingly, and professionally, even if their English and vocabulary is strong. Consequently, their application is often rejected. So click here to read a set of guidelines on how to write effectively. And these guidelines will impart some recommendations that are often useful but seldom recognised. For example, if you avoid the word it, your sentences are more likely to be precise and concise. If you replace common verbs such as get, give, take, make, hold and have with more precise words, your sentences will tend to seem more credible. And if you include words like if, when, before, during, after and at as early in the sentence as possible, your writing will tend to be easier to understand. If your research and writing skills are very advanced, you can choose any university you please. So how should you decide which university is suitable for you? Well, first you need to contact possible supervisors. To identify possible supervisors, perhaps enter your research topic, the university, region or nation in which you'd like to study, and the phrase PhD supervisor or Masters by Research supervisor into Google. Before you speak to your supervisor, click here to read some helpful guidelines on how to prepare. Although these guidelines were written to help individuals prepare for job interviews, many of these suggestions could improve your capacity to interact effectively with supervisors as well. For example, as these guidelines recommend, you should practice answering common questions in many different locations, one location for each question. And before the meeting, you should remember a time in which you helped someone considerably. And you should speak slightly louder than perhaps you normally. Then, click here to read some helpful guidelines on how to choose your supervisor and your university. For instance, you should consider a range of questions such as which supervisors demonstrate humility, acknowledging their personal limitations? Which supervisors don't seem too rushed and respond within a day or explain their delays? Which supervisors seem like compassionate people and are also sensitive to your needs. And at which universities can you work, say, in an office surrounded by nature? All of these and many other qualities have been shown to benefit students. So finally, you need to submit your application to a university. Besides your research proposal, you'll also need to answer other questions and submit your CV. So click here for a pleasing design for CVs. Your CV will most likely differ from this design, but it could include some of these features, such as a simple but consistent arrangement. You are now ready to apply.